Welcome back to the EVLC podcast. Today we have Chace Barber, CEO and co-founder of Edison Motors. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's awesome.
Yeah. Can you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Like I said, I'm Chace Barber. A little bit about my background is that I was actually a truck driver for about 15 years before starting Edison Motors. So after 15 years of driving truck, I started looking at the way trucks were built. I started looking at electric trucks, and I'm like, I think we could build a better electric truck than what we're seeing. And we put our heads down and we did it. We built a better electric truck.
That's so awesome.
What inspired your vision for Edison Motors?
Oh, I looked back at the way things were done. We had a great history of truck innovation, and I'm from British Columbia, Canada, and some of the best truck brands all started here. Kenworth, Western Star, Hayes, Pacific Trucks were known to be legends in BC. They were, with our logging and our heavy mining industry, we built really, really tough trucks. And I looked back at what was done 30, 40 years ago and thought, well, what if I just took those great classic trucks that we use and I put a new modern spin on things? So a little bit of the past, but with modern technology was my inspiration.
So how did you even come up with that idea of building a hybrid truck?
Well, it was a little bit of a long winding road to get here. But me and my business partner, the other co-founder, Eric, we had a trucking company. And I saw so many advantages for electrification in logging, especially in the mountains in BC. The logs are all up at the top of the hill, so you got to go up empty. So you don't use much power going up because you're empty, and then you load logs on, and then you're going downhill loaded, and you're just using a lot of power to hold that weight back going downhill. So regenerative braking is amazing in that kind of application. Like, I don't think you could get a better application for an electric vehicle. So we were already looking at electric trucks. We reserved a Tesla Semi, and in the 5 years between reserving it and when we decided to start Edison Motors, we really got into power systems as part of what we were doing with our trucking. In that we started in hauling generators, and then we realized you could make more money by installing the generators you were hauling. So we started installing generators, and then Eric, my business partner, he came up with a brilliant idea that said we looked at what was going on with the curve for generators, is that the power load was peaking because some of it was like off-grid residential things where you'd have a community of like 20, 30 people. And what would happen is they wanted us to replace a 95 kilowatt hour generator with just another 95 kilowatt hour generator. Well, that seems really big for a small community of 20 people, basically up by the Yukon. So we looked at their average power load, and their average load throughout the day, if you balance it out, was only about 20 kilowatt hours. So you're putting in a 95 kilowatt hour generator, and then you're ramping it way down on average, or barely running it at night because no one was using really any power at night. So, but the problem is that, around 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock, everyone got home, everyone spiked the power, and the power would spike up to 70. So they wanted 95 to take when 70 was the base, just to take that extra capacity. Well, what if we instead used a battery to meet that peak power demand? We could downsize the generator to 35 so it meets the base load and recharges the battery. And then we could essentially use an electric car battery to meet the base power demand, or the peak power demand. And then, of course, in the summertime, we'll put in a bunch of solar. It's up in the Yukon, it'll solar. So it made it way more efficient. And it was kind of a light bulb moment in that, is that, hey, if we can make this community way more efficient going hybrid, and we want to buy an electric truck, why don't we get a hybrid electric truck? And nobody had made one. So we basically came up with the idea, we got a knowledge on hybrid, we have knowledge on semi trucks, we cobbled together an electric truck. We got our first kit actually from EV West, and it was a EV West kit that we put into that 1962 Kenworth. And it was funny because I think EV West was super, super doubtful. Uh, they were basically like, guys, I don't think our kits are designed for 18 wheelers. I'm like, no, trust me, it'll work. It'll work. And I mean, it did. It worked as a proof of concept. Could that truck go to haul the work? No, because they were right. A Tesla Model S motor does not have strong enough gearing to move 100,000 pounds of logs. But we could drive the empty truck around, we could test the hybrid, and then we took our lessons learned from that, and then we built our first real production prototype.
Wow. When did you decide to let go of the idea of getting a Tesla truck and just start building yours?
When I was complaining online. Um, I was making some TikToks and it was one of those ones where I was complaining. I'm like, well, if I was Tesla, I would build it this way. Or if I was doing it, I would do it this way and I'd change this and I'd do it. And somebody online said, well, why don't you just build your own truck then? If you're gonna, instead of complaining, why don't you just build your own? I think they were being like facetious. But I said, you know what? To heck with it. I will build my own truck and I'll call it Edison Motors because I'm stealing Tesla's idea to build an electric truck.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest challenge you've faced in your career?
Oh, government, dealing with the government. Honestly, that is the biggest. It's easier to build your own electric hybrid truck than it is to just deal with government things. Then there was a whole thing. We found out about what we thought was a big government controversy and scandal, and that hit the news media, and then finding that like a work-life balance was completely out. Like, never start your own business if you want a work-life balance.
Was there ever a point where you felt like giving up throughout starting your company?
Yes. I mean, most people would probably tell you no. No, I never thought, but I did. I think most business owners, they'd be lying if they didn't say, why am I doing this? When you spend so many times, like you don't have time to go hang out with your friends, your personal relationships suffer because you're so busy working, and you don't make a lot of money when you're starting out. So like I'm still living in my parents' basement because like can't afford my own place. All the money is going back into the R&D for the business. So you're not hanging out with friends, you're not talking to your family as often as you want. You're still living in your parents' basement in your 30s, and it's all those things you need to do. And you're like, why are we doing this? But that's why I advocate having a good business partner to get you through those things. It's in a lot of things in life, you'll find that like people will have a wife or a husband and they rely on that spouse in their personal life to help them get through things together as a partner and a team. I'm a big proponent of having a partner and a team in your business. So when you're feeling like, man, why are we doing this? A good partner will come over, like somebody that's your best friend, they'll pick you up and be like, hey man, just relax. I got it this weekend. I'll handle the phones, go take off. Or when he's feeling like, why am I doing it? I'm like, hey man, just go relax, take a weekend off, let me handle things. A good partner where you can rely on those strengths. He's really strong where I'm really weak. He's really good at electrical, I'm really good at mechanical. You need a good partner when you're feeling low.
So true.
How did it feel from being a truck driver to also becoming an entrepreneur?
No, it
Junior.
was you bet. It was it wasn't too bad. Honestly, people like to give truck drivers heck a little bit. But truck driving is one of those jobs that does set you up really well to be an entrepreneur. The hours are long and you're kind of your own boss when you're a truck driver. You set your own schedule, there's no time clock, you're paid by the load, so you're only paid if you get the job done when you're a truck driver. So there's a lot of things that are kind of entrepreneurial already, and then we shifted from easing into it. Is that I was a company driver, now we own our own truck. Well, now I got a little bit more things, a little bit more taxes. So it was a small, gradual growth into the kind of entrepreneur we are now.
Are there any like major differences?
Between being a truck driver and running a, yeah, uh, managing people is definitely one of them. Turns out when you're a truck driver and you spend 15 hours a day by yourself, you don't have to talk to a lot of people. So that's honestly one of the big ones, is that now when you become a CEO of a company, I spend all day just talking with people on the cell phone now, or talking on things like this, which is great. It's fun, but that was the biggest change to get used to for sure.
Yeah. Who would you say has been a positive influence in your life?
My parents, honestly, yeah, my parents have been the biggest positive influence. They've been the most supportive through this whole thing. Could not have done it without them. Literally, we were doing this in their backyard.
Yeah.
Our shop is in their backyard.
They must have a very big backyard.
It's getting a little cramped.
What has been the most rewarding part of your journey so far?
Being able to drive legally on a road a truck we designed and built ourselves. To be able to just sketch something out on a napkin, draw it up, design it, build it, test it, get it approved to be street legal, and driving that on the street for the first time. That is by far the coolest thing.
What have been your top lessons learned?
Oh, find a good partner, try and manage your stress, get an early grip on stress, and just trust in people to do what they do best. Like, hire really good people and then trust those good people to do what you hired them to do.
I bet it could be hard to let go of responsibilities.
It is. It's when something's your baby and you do everything and you're worried about, like, is this guy I hired gonna make the right decision? And you can't micromanage them. You just gotta, there's a reason why you hired them. You gotta just trust that they can do it. They're, yeah, people make mistakes, but you gotta realize too that, like, you're not fallible yourself. Sure, Dave may have made a mistake, but I could also have made a similar or a different mistake. So
What advice would you give to others who have big ideas but are scared to take that first step?
just get started and do it. I see way too many people, they're bogged down in trying to create a perfect plan. And I can tell you from our experience that there's no such thing as a perfect plan. When we started this, like I said, we started out to build logging trucks. Because, like I said, you're going uphill empty, you're regenerative braking, coming downhill loaded. It was a perfect application. If we had this set out in business, so now we're building 6 trucks for customers, and not one of those trucks is a logging truck. The loggers didn't buy it. People came out and they started talking about how it makes sense for a concrete truck or a crane truck or some other use that we hadn't thought of. So if we spent too much time just marketing to logging companies and going what we thought would be a great use for the product, we wouldn't have sold the truck. So
Yeah.
we just got started. We did what we did. The first prototype was rough and we improved it. And then the second prototype was way better. But now we've learned a few things and we've improved them. So just get started. Don't be afraid to make mistakes and go for it.
So what's next for Edison Motors?
Well, we're hoping to raise a little bit of investment money and buy a shop, move out of my parents' backyard, and hoping to build a few more trucks. So we've just started the next couple truck builds. The frame rails are in the shop, and we're hoping to keep growing and expand on that.
That's great.
What inspired you to start the high school go-kart race? I mean, challenge.
Yeah, I thought it. honestly, the merit shop teacher came up to us and he said that, hey, do you remember the old BC Hydro like EV challenge? I'm like, yeah, I kind of do. They're like, yeah, that hasn't been done in 20 years. And I thought, well, that's stupid. That was wicked awesome. Like getting kids involved in building electric vehicles is great. Like, and they're like, well, how do we do it? And I just figured, well, why don't we start our own challenge? Like, I wish things like that existed when I was in high school. Because I'll be totally honest with you, I did great in university, but I barely graduated high school. Like, I was probably like a C minuses, barely 50%. If I could get an assignment done with 50% and just still graduate, that's all I wanted to do. I was not interested in high school at all. I was going to be a truck driver like my grandpa, my dad who drove truck when I was in school. Like that's what I was going to do. Why did I need to worry about anything else? But like doing things like that would have made me interested in it. Like for all my buddies in high school, we didn't study. We built things, we designed things. We didn't know we were doing engineering. We were just building and designing cool things that we liked. I thought, so I kept thinking, like, man, if there was something when I was in high school that could get me involved and like compete, because there was so many things. If you played hockey or soccer or football, there was sport activities you could do. If you were in the band, there was bands. There was nothing for people like me that wanted to design and build and race and compete. So we were basically just a bunch of friends and groups and doing that on our own. Like, let's just make that a school event. I probably would have discovered an actual academic passion for it, and I probably would have been like, this is awesome. This is engineering. I want to be an engineer and went to university. Instead, I left and I went to go drive truck. And it wasn't until about 3 years of driving truck that I'm like, you know what? Maybe I could go back to school. And by then I had already discovered my passion because I figured out that that was my passion. I went back and I got 4.0, straight A across the board. Didn't even get a single B in university because I was doing something I was passionate about. I wish I had discovered that passion 3, 4 years earlier when I was in high school, kind of just wasting my time. So that was my own personal reason to start that challenge.
Wow. What was the most rewarding part about that challenge?
Oh, the most rewarding part about it was that it worked. Like honestly, we put in very, very little pre-planning into that. We just went to a go-kart kit manufacturer, like people that build electric axles, and we're like, hey, can we get 50 go-karts? And we dropped them off at like 30, 40 different schools and said, okay, here's a box of parts. Please build something. And they're like, well, what are the rules? And I'm like, I don't know. Wear a helmet and put a seatbelt in it. But you've got to compete in a series of races. And it could have went horribly. Like, I had no idea what these high school kids were going to do with just a box of bolts and no further supervision. They're like, there was no instruction manual, there was nothing. I'm like, figure it out. That's part of the challenge is that you have to figure out how these electric vehicle works. I'm not telling you anything about this kit.
You just have to build it.
You just got to build it. And out of the 45 or so we actually dropped off, 35 schools were able to figure it out, compete, race, and it was a successful day. So
Wow.
they went from, oh my God, we have no idea what we're doing. And yeah, they blew some stuff up. There was a few schools that we had to send a few spare parts to,
Yeah.
but that was the cool part of the challenge. So,
How are you making a positive impact in the world?
oh, you know what? Honestly, one of the coolest things to me is that we've inspired a lot of other people to start their own businesses and do their own thing. I had one guy show up a few months back with a brand new Dodge service mechanic truck, and he wanted me to sign the hood of his brand new truck. And the reason for that is apparently we inspired him to go start his own business. He was debating 2 years ago about starting his own mobile mechanic service. And then he said, well, holy crap, this guy down the road is just a truck driver and starting his own electric vehicle company and building his own electric vehicles. He's like, if that guy out of a small tent can start his own truck manufacturing company, I can start my own mechanicals company, service company, and he bought an old used truck and he ran it and he got good contracts enough that he was able to buy a brand new truck. So when he bought his brand new truck, he wanted me to sign the hood because I inspired him. So I've heard those stories again and again, and that's probably one of the coolest things for me.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's so inspiring. Yeah, that was our last question.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me on. This is great.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you so much for all that you're doing for the kids as well.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be I hope we get to work together on that high school go-kart challenge.
Yeah, next year, right? We're partnering with EVLC.
Yes.
Yes, we are. I feel like we need to figure out how to get as many go-karts into as many high school kids' hands or as we possibly can.
Yes.
I want to also do the go-kart challenge too. It just seems fun to like do the off-road challenge and all the like the sled towing and all that stuff.
Yeah, some barrel racing, like we've upgraded the motors this year. So the one thing we ran 1 kilowatt hour motors last year, 48 volt 1 kilowatt. We're upgrading to 5 kilowatts this year.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it's a good idea or a terrible idea, but it should be fun,
Yeah, I guess we'll find out.
right? I guess with we're partnering with EVLC, we'll need your hand. We'll have to work together to find some cool challenges. The sled pull didn't go as great as we thought. Turned out whoever put their tow hitch the highest won. They just figured out the mechanics that if you lift the sled up really high, it doesn't drag into the dirt. So, well, that's okay, clever, but we need a harder challenge next year. So
Yeah.
if you could let me know some ideas, we'll work together on that.
Yeah, of course. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This was a lot of fun.